Chapter 6 The Overpaid Maid. Some days later, Bruno was lying on the bed in his room, staring up at the ceiling above his head. The white paint unpleasant manner, unlike the paintwork in the house in Berlin that were chipped and received annual top-up every summer when mother brought decorators in. On a particular afternoon, he lay there, his diary cracks, narrowing his eyes to consider what might lie behind them. He imagined that there were insects living on the spaces and paint and sealing itself, pushing it out, cracking it while opening it up, trying to create a gap so that they could squeeze through and look for the window where they might make their escape. Nothing, thought Bruno. Not even the insects would ever choose to stay at Outwit. Everything here is horrible, he said out loud, even though there was no one present to hear him. But somehow it made him feel better to hear the words stated away. I hate this house. I hate my room. And I even hate the paintwork. I hate it all. Absolutely everything. Just as he finished speaking, Maria came through the door and carrying an armful of his washed, dried iron clothes. He hesitated for a moment when she saw him lying there, but then bowed her head a little and walked slightly over towards the wardrobe. Hello, said Bruno, for although talking to a maid wasn't quite the same thing as having some friends to talk to, there was no one else around to have a conversation with, and it made much more sense than talking to himself. Girl was nowhere to be found, and he had begun to worry that he would go mad with boredom. Master Bruno said, separating his vest, his trouser, and his underwear, putting them in the different drawers and on the different shelves. I expect you're unhappy about this new arrangement, as I am, said Bruno. And she turned to look at him, expression that suggested she didn't understand what he meant. This, he explained, sitting up and looking around. Everything here awful, isn't it? Don't you hate it too? Maria opened her mouth to say something and closed it again just as quickly. She sat considering her response, carefully selecting the right words, preparing them to say, and then thinking better of it, discarding them together. Almost all his life, she had come to work for them when she was only 3 years old, and they had always got quite as well for the most part, but she had never showed a particular sign of life before. She just got on with her job, polishing the furniture, washing the clothes, helping with shopping and the cooking. Sometimes taking him to school and collecting him again, although that had been more common when Bruno was when he turned 9. He decided he was old enough to make his way to where the hall alone. Don't you like it here then? She said finally. Like it? Replied Bruno, slight laugh. Like it? He repeated, no louder this time. Of course I don't like it. It's awful. There's nothing to do. There's no one to talk to. Nobody play with. You can't tell me that you're happy we've moved here, surely. I always enjoyed the garden in the house in Berlin, said Maria, answering an entirely different question. Sometimes when it was a warm afternoon, I liked to sit out there in the sunshine and eat my lunch underneath the ivy tree by the pond. The flowers were very beautiful there. The scent and the bees hovered around them and never bothered you if you just let them alone. So you don't like it here then? Asked Bruno. You think it's bad as I do? Maria frowned. is not important, she said. What isn't? What I think. Well, of course it's important, said Bruno irritably, as if she was just being delivered. You're part of the family, aren't you? I'm not sure whether your father would agree with that, said Maria, allowing herself a smile because she was touched by he had just said. Well, you've been brought here against your will, just like I have, all in the same boat, and it's leaking. For a moment it seemed to Bruno if Maria really was going to tell him what she was thinking, and as if she was terribly angry about something. Her mouth opened, but froze for there a moment. Scared of all the things she might say, she allowed herself to begin. Please tell me, Maria, said Bruno, because maybe if we all feel the same, we can persuade Father to take us home again. She looked away from him for a few slight moments and shook her head sadly before turning back to face him. Your father knows what is for the best, she said. You must trust in that. But I'm not sure I do, said Bruno. I think he's made a terrible mistake. Then it's a mistake we all have to live with. When I make a mistake, I get punished, insisted Bruno, irritated by the fact that the rules that always apply to children never seem to apply in grown-ups at all, despite the facts that they were the ones enforced them. Stupid father, he added under his breath. Maria's eyes were open wide, and she took a step towards him. Her hand covered her mouth for a moment in horror. She looked around to make sure no one was listening to them, and had heard Bruno had just said. You mustn't say that, she said. You must never say something like that about your father. I don't see why not, said Bruno. He was a little ashamed of himself for having said it, but the last thing going to do is sit back and receive telling off when no one seemed to care opinions anyway. Because your father is a good man, said Maria. A very good man. He takes all of us. Bringing all us we're out here in the middle of nowhere, you mean taking care of us? There are many things your father has done, she said. Many things of which you should be proud. If it wasn't for your father, where would I be now after all? Back to Berlin, I expect. Working in a nice house, eating under ivy, and leaving the bees alone. You don't remember when I come to work you, do you? She asked quietly, sitting down for the side of the bed, something she had never done before. How could you? You are only 3. Your father took me in it, and I needed him. She gave me a job, a home, food. You can imagine what it's like to need food. You've never been hungry, have you? Bruno frowned. He wanted to mention that he was feeling big package right now. Instead, he realized for the first time he had never fully considered her to be a person, life, and history of all of her own. After all, she had never done anything other than be his family's maid. He had dressed, and anything made sinful. Came to think of it, he had to admit there would be more to her life than waiting on him and his family. She must have think that she missed her friend again, just like him, cried herself to sleep since she got here, just like the boys far less grown up and brave than him. She was rather pretty too, she noticed from the inside as it did so. My mother knew your father when he was just a boy of her age for a few moments. For your grandmother, she was a dresser for her. She toured the German younger woman. She arranged all the clothes for the concert, washed them, ironed them, and repaired them. Magnificent gowns, all of them. As this change, Bruno, like all the work, every design, you don't find dressmakers like that these days. She shook her head and smiled at the memory, listening patiently. She made the show all laid out and ready whenever her grandma arrived at the dressing room before a show. And after your grandmother retired, of course, my mother, I received a pension of towers or Harden offered me a job, the first I had ever had. A few months later, very sick, and she needed a lot of medical care, and your father arranged it all, even though he was obliged to. He paid for it in her own pocket because she had been a friend to his mother, and he took me to a household for the same reason. And when she died, he paid expenses for funeral too. So don't you ever call your father stupid, Bruno. Not around me, I won't allow it. Bruno bit his lip. He had hoped that Maria'd take his side campaign to get away out with, but he could see where her loyalty really lay, and he had to admit that he rather proud of his father when he heard the story. Well, he said, unable to think of something clever to say now. I suppose that was nice of him. Yes, said Maria, standing up and walking over towards the window, answered which all the way from the hot spring. He was very kind to me then, he continued quietly, assured, watching the people, soldiers go by their far away. He is so on his soul, truly he does, which makes me wonder. She drifted off as she cracked suddenly, as she might cry. Wonder what? Asked Bruno. Wonder what how he can what? How insisted Bruno. The noise of the door slamming came from downstairs and reverberated through the office so loudly, like a gunshot, that Bruno saw that Bruno jumped, a small scream. Bruno recognized the footsteps pounding up the stairs, and quicker, rolled back on pressing against the door. Happened next, he held his breath, expecting trouble. The hopeless case. Spoke to her through the doorway. Seemed surprised to find an family maid engaged in conversation. What's going on? Asked Squirrel. Nothing, said Bruno defensively. What do you want? Get out! Get out yourself, she replied, even though she swore looked at Maria, narrowing her eyes suspiciously as she did so. Run me a breath, Maria, why can't you run your own dog? Because she's the maid, Sigrid was staring at him. That was here for? That was. Not spending on marching over to her. She's not just here to do things all the time, especially that we can do ourselves. He had gone mad, and then looked at Maria. He shook her head quickly. Of course, Miss Girdle. I just tidying brother's clothes away. I beat you. Well, don't be long, said Girdle rudely. Unlike Bruno, she had never stopped to think of the parcel with feeling just like hers before marching back to the door behind her. Eyes didn't follow her, but her cheeks had taken a pink glow. I still think he made a terrible mistake. A few minutes. He apologized behavior, but didn't know whether that was the right thing to do or not. Situation like that, very uncomfortable, because in his heart he knew that no reason to be impolite to someone. Even there was such a thing's manner. Even if he did, must say that loud, said Marie quickly. Shake some sense to him. Promise me you won't. But why? He asked, frowning. I'm only saying what I feel. I or not? No. No, you're not. I'm not what I feel, he repeated incredulously. No, she insisted, her voice becoming grating now as she approached to it. Just keep quiet about it, Bruno. How much trouble you could cause for all of us? Bruno stared at her. There was something in her eyes. Then he never seen it before. It almost settled him. Well, he muttered, standing up, heading over towards the door, anxious to be. I was only saying, that's all. I was just making clothes away. Although, if I did, I don't think anyone could criticize me. And were Father half to that? Bruno, if you had any sense at all, you would stay quiet and listen to your father's telling. All your tune is all over. That was I intended you anyway. Do than that, after all. He ought to us to change things. No reason he could think of. Bruno urged to cry. He surprised and blinked of free time how he felt. Although he caught her eyes again. Something strange in his air. Her eyes was if they're tears too. All in all, back to reach the door. Where are you going? Outside, said Bruno. Take all your business. He walked slowly. He walked to the stairs. Get out of the house soon. A few seconds, he was outside. He was starting up and down the drive to do something active, and it tired him out. The distance, he could see the gate that led to the door that led home. Idea of going there, idea of running away. It was even more unpleasant to him than the idea of staying.